rare and balanced view on politics in today's world. Based on facts, born of rationality, common sense, and logic, providing context on today's events, this is American Perspective with Rick Thomas.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the number one liquid-fueled, liquid lubricated show on the interwebs. This is American Perspective with Rick Thomas. All right. Okay, so tonight I got a ton of stuff for you. I'm hoping I'll be able to get through the majority of it by the end of the program. Thank you all for showing up. I do appreciate it, of course, as always. You guys are what the show is all about. Yes, I put together these shows, and yes, I put them out there, and yes, you guys come and consume them, and that is the highlight of my day every single time. So thank you very much for showing up. Now let's take a real quick look. Look around real quick, and I see Becky and Tommy, and I think that's it over, at least in the chat over on Facebook. Over on the good old Rumbles, I see Judge Wild, the Outlaw Dogs, 3 Chevy, Buddy Weiser, as well as Nana of JJS is over there, and Tommy seems to be slumming in both places. Anyway, Becky is on holiday down there in the land down under, and she decides to come here and hang out with me. She's given up vacation time, or holiday time, as they say it, to listen to my broadcast. So hopefully it's worth it. Anyway, all right. So tonight for the Pledge of Allegiance, we have Coco, Cam, and Sean. For those of you that don't know, you will hear Sean, who is autistic and is mostly nonverbal. You will actually hear him not only recite parts of the Pledge of Allegiance, but also add some sounds as well. And so don't be alarmed. That's nothing unusual. That's just the way Sean communicates with the world. And so, without any further ado, please, if you are of mind to do this, stand, put your hand over your heart, take your hats off, and join with Coco, Cam, and Sean in the recitation of the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And I thank you, Coco, Cam, and Sean, for providing that audio for our fantastic Pledge of Allegiance, which we start the show with. Pretty much, well, every show that I can remember anyway. Gotta be honest, there's times when I just get so excited about a show I tend to forget occasionally. So anyway, if you would like to have your audio, your voice featured for the Pledge of Allegiance, just go ahead and record yourself saying it in your style, whatever that style happens to be, and send it to me at fans, FANS, at AmericanPerspective.online. That's fans at AmericanPerspective.online. And, of course, tonight is Whiskey Wednesday. It's like Taco Tuesday, but for badasses. And tonight I am drinking out of the gift of the Whiskey Warriors. They sent me this, the Wild Turkey 101, and I thank them, of course, every time I pop it open and drink from it. And tonight it is within the True Grit Roots Network, old-fashioned rocks, whatever kind of glass that you want to call this, with my typical stones in the bottom. And so there it is. That's some good bourbon right there. All right. Let's go ahead and get things kicked off because, like I said, I got a long show tonight. I got a lot of stuff I got to get to tonight. So let's tell you a little bit about TGRN, True Grit Roots Network. TGRN.net is where you can find us on the web. We have a fantastic 365-day program, 24/7, 365 is what I meant to say. And it is peppered with fantastic on-air personalities who all have experience within the blues world, whether it is DJing or singing or being part of a band and playing. Every single one of them brings their unique perspective to the blues world, and that is TGRN Blues. I want to tell you about the show called Roots and Fruits, hosted by our own Vinnie Marini. And Vinny says this about the Roots and Fruits show: having worshipped at the altar of Willie Dixon, who stated, "The blues are the roots and everything else is the fruits," since I was 16, this show will explore the blues and every other genre of music. If it fits the theme and works into the mix, nothing is going to be excluded. 2 hours of music that tells a story. Theme sets, the same song from 2, 3 to 4 genres. You just never know. Now, Roots and Fruits airs Sundays only at 2 p.m. Central Time. That's Roots and Fruits, Vinnie Marini hosting, Sundays, 2 p.m. Central Time. Every week, he brings a new set of music, and it is a fantastic show. You got to go check it out. Once again, Roots and Fruits only found on True Grit Roots Network, TGRN Blues, out of Austin, Texas. All right. So, I don't know if anybody's noticed, but apparently the sorry, I'm looking at the chat. I'm seeing something from Judge that's confusing me, but I'm hoping that he's not saying that my audio's humming. Hope that he's saying humming or something else. But anyway, I don't know if anybody noticed, but the protests across the country in a few places in particular have gotten a little out of hand. One of them in particular, which, all of these are occurring on college campuses. The ones that are basically being allowed to continue without police intervention are, of course, in the states that are traditionally blue states, meaning Democrat controlled. And so because of these, they're getting worse and worse. I talked about, Columbia taking over the hall and they actually got cleared out by the New York City Police Department. They went in and cleared them out, got them out of there. So I'm hoping that kind of quells whatever happens in that neck of the woods. But the LA Police Department in particular and the UCLA campus, the police weren't really doing a lot. And so, as you can see by this image in the LA Times, and obviously I did not select this right. Give me just a second here. Here we go. As you can see by this image in the LA Times, there was a group of counter-protesters that showed up, and those counter-protests those counter-protests that happened, there was a group that marched on to the scene. They were wearing black with white face masks, and they went ahead and started taking down some of the barriers. And, of course, the camp's residents didn't take kindly to that, so a small brawl broke out. There was some fighting and some, as you can see in the photo, there was some weapons that were being used. And, so You know, the thing about it is that even now, when you start pushing people to the edge, okay, when you start pushing people to the edge and you're not enforcing the law, people will take it within their own hands to enforce it for you. And that was proven here after a violent night, apparently, at UCLA. Just so you are aware, that is kind of what's going on. And it's getting even worse. We're also, we are also finding out, like, my wife she acted a little shocked today when she was talking about the protest that's happening down at the University of Washington, which is not that far away from me. And apparently there were some Jewish students that were essentially being accosted, assaulted, and that's happening all over the place because of the fact that, you know, again, we're dealing with anti-Israel, anti-Jewish, bigoted people who are trying to push the American public in a certain direction. And this is not going to end well, I don't think, for these folks, but they're doing it anyway. You know, again, keep your head on a swivel, folks. This is just the start. This is just the start. And this is going to be, you know, I'm just telling you, it's getting worse and worse and worse as we get closer to 2024, especially if things happen with, like, some of the Trump trials and things like that. But I digress. That's not the topic of this evening's discussion. All right. So once again, Marjorie Taylor Greene, just to kind of shift gears a little bit here, I'd wanted to give you that kind of an update. But just to shift gears a little bit here, Marjorie Taylor Greene has introduced you know, again, the motion to vacate the speaker's chair. And I'm just telling you right now, people, I know he's not a lot of people's choice. He's not necessarily my choice. Something has occurred with him where he is no longer the staunch conservative that we were led to believe. I understand that. There's only one problem with this. And that is that we only have a small majority in the House, and all they would need is 1 or 2 Republican votes, and we would end up with Hakeem Jeffries. Okay. We do not want that. We do not want Hakeem Jeffries. And hello, Aaron, over on Facebook. Hi there. Thanks for coming and joining. So here's the thing is that you just, you know, the people that want to get rid of Mike Johnson don't seem to really fully understand what is going to happen if Johnson gets vacated. The Democrats are sitting there with freaking saliva dripping from their lips to get Hakeem Jeffries in place. And why? It has, I answer that simply that it has really nothing to do with the bills that got pushed through. Yes, they were disappointing. Okay. It was understandable and it was going to happen. All right. But the thing about it is that there are other things that are going on. For an example, James Comer and all of the work that the House Oversight Committee is doing. The work that Jim Jordan's committee is doing, which in fact they're about ready to launch an investigation or get started in investigating Fani Willis, who, for those of you who may be born today, is the rogue DA in Georgia that brought the case up against Donald Trump. If we allow Mike Johnson to get deposed as speaker, what you're going to end up with is Hakeem Jeffries and all of those things that are going on in the back that we don't see every day, that we don't hear about every day. All of those wonderful things that are going on with finding out about Joe Biden, finding out about all the things that are happening with, the stuff that's going on in the darkest parts of government. He, it ends up to where all of that stuff gets buried. All of that stuff goes away and gets buried. We don't want that, folks. We definitely don't want that. And so what we need to do is we need to make absolutely certain that Mike Johnson, and I'm sorry, Marjorie Taylor Greene, I understand, I get where your anger might be coming from, but you're basically being stupid about it. And I'm just going to call it like I see it. This is a stupid maneuver, especially if you get that taken care of and pull it out. That's all I got to say, is that is just a dumb maneuver. And I don't agree with it. I think I've mentioned it before on this program, what we need to do is we need to allow these people to continue in their positions until such time as the Trump election happens. And so anyway, I don't agree with this. I think we're shooting ourselves in the foot, and we should just wait until the end of the election of 2024, and the next year we flip the speakership, the speakership to somebody else who may not be quite as compromised. And, honestly, I don't know if he's compromised or not, but I really think that Mike Johnson is potentially under pressure, that if he vacates the speakership or resigns the speakership, that the Republicans will lose seats, which we cannot afford to do, because if we do, we end up with nothing. And so, yeah, I just don't think it's time to shift horses, even though this horse doesn't seem to be performing well. I don't think it's time for us to shift horses in the speakership race and position. And that's just my 2 cents on the whole thing, realistically. All right. Doing another gear shift here. I just wanted to bring that comment up, but doing another gear shift here. Immigration is not, and unfortunately, the whole Mayorkas thing where the Senate sort of buried it, that was the wrong thing to do. It really was the wrong thing to do. And, I think everybody kind of agrees with me. But what is the right thing is the fact that immigration is starting to take its toll against the Democrats. Okay. Now, this piece in Hot Air came out, and the title of it here, for those that obviously are listening on the audio portion of the program, that immigration is killing Dems in the polls when a Democrat Congress critter starts talking about returning to Trump-era immigration policies. That's right. And even better, it happened on NPR. That whole national public radio thing that has a left-wing slant? Well, yep, it happened there. So here's the Congresswoman. Somebody said that Trump was right on NPR. A Democrat had to say it. NPR listeners had to hear it, and a host had to swallow her bile. Oh, this is just fantastic. The Democrat lawmaker says the U.S. does not have operational control of the southern border and was urging to go back to Trump-era policies, including they were talking about Trump-era policy known as Title 42. So in other words, the left is starting to eat its own, and it's starting to, turn on each other because of the fact that they know that things are going bad. And things are not looking good for their boy. And so they're starting to cut into their scenario when it comes to this. So this is just, I'm going to celebrate this a little bit because of the fact that this is going to be a fantastic thing. And I do see that Coco Domingue is got a special birthday tomorrow, so I'll probably be singing happy birthday tomorrow. I'll have to remember that. Coco, send me an email so that I can remember. But anyway, so immigration itself is killing them. Now, it's not just, and keep in mind, when they talk on NPR and they talk on the left-wing outlets like CNN, like, did you see, for an example, did you see that whole meltdown of Nancy Pelosi on that left-wing commentator who basically was not being all that nice to the Democrats, and Nancy just went nuts. Nutty Nancy, with her hammering Paul Pelosi husband, went ahead and just like tried to rip her a new one, but actually just sounded like let's face it, sounded like a bitch. And so anyway, the Democrats, the longer this goes on, the Democrats are starting to like fall apart. And it's really, really cool to see. But hey, speaking of immigration and that kind of thing, that I talked about the whole 320,000 immigrants that were flown all throughout the country and everything. The DHS released some documentation. The DHS released some documentation that pointed out that most of the migrants that were part of that 320,000, in fact, they cut it back to 200,000, but most of the migrants that were part of that whole parole plan, all right, they landed in Florida. According to the documents that were released on Tuesday, which was yesterday, of course, covering approximately 200,000 migrant arrivals between January and August of 2023, showing that 4 Florida cities were among the top 15 places where migrants from Cuba, Nicaragua, Haiti, and Venezuela are coming, according to a report in the New York Post. Under the administration's parole policy, migrants from the 4 countries can qualify if they obtain a U.S. sponsor, pass a background check, and can demonstrate that they should be allowed parole based on urgent humanitarian reasons or present a significant benefit to the public. Those granted parole are then allowed to fly into designated ports of entry, where they are given authorization to remain in the United States for 2 years and get work permits. Now, more than 400,000 migrants have been processed for this program. And according to the figures released on Tuesday, the top 15 cities for entry were Miami, Florida, Fort Lauderdale, Florida, New York City, New York, Houston, Texas, Orlando, Florida, Los Angeles, California, Tampa, Florida, Dallas, Texas, San Francisco, California, Atlanta, Georgia, Newark, New Jersey, Washington, D.C., Chicago, Illinois, Las Vegas, Nevada, Austin, Texas, and the Miami International Airport. Those were the top 15 cities for entry. Now, the committee, I guess it was there, said the documents further showed that as of October 2023, there's approximately 1.6 million migrants still waiting for approval to enter the United States through this parole program. These documents expose the egregious lengths that Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas will go to ensure inadmissible aliens reach every corner of the country, from Orlando and Atlanta to Las Vegas and San Francisco. House Homeland Security Committee Chair Mark Green, who's a Republican from Tennessee, said in a statement. See, it's stuff like this that should have gone into the impeachment. And maybe it was there because the Senate didn't even bother to look at it. They didn't even bother to have a trial. They just went ahead and dismissed it right away. Yeah. Anyway, so again, this stuff is kind of like just going berserk on the left. Then the left, you know what's funny about it, the whole thing realistically, is the left is so out of touch and so out of, out of this world in terms of their thinking that they basically, they look at this stuff and they celebrate this. They celebrate crap like this. And that's like their whole big thing, is to celebrate all of the BS and crap that's going on with all of these immigrants coming in here, illegal immigrants. They're being, given asylum or whatever and they're handed out court dates that are 2, 3, 4, some even up to 10 years. So what are they doing? They're sitting here and they're hanging out, and what are they doing? Are they working? If they're working, how did they get the appropriate documentation to work? It's just a huge question that is the biggest, to me, one of the biggest things that this administration has to answer to, next to the economic issue, as far as that goes. I'm just floored over the fact that the delusionary left just doesn't see this as a bad thing at all. But they go ahead and they do it anyway. I mean, they're doing what they're doing, and that's just, it's just one of those, I don't know. Anyway. All right. Before I get to my next series of stories, which, by the way, the next series of stories, I'm going to kind of weave some things around. And so hopefully you'll see as I weave it all around and wrap it all together in a nice, neat, pretty bow, in order to bring things together for you on the main topic for this evening. But before I do that, of course, I have to tell you about this fantastic thing that I have available for you, known as the American Perspective logoed gear store. That's right. American Perspective logos. I have 3 variations that are all available to you on sweatshirts, t-shirts, tank tops, hoodies, and even, in the coffee mugs. I do have coffee mugs, but they're only available in the one style of the logo. I've got 3 different styles of the logo to kind of fit with the 3 different colors, the colors that are out there. So yeah, you should go and check this out. Find all of this wonderful selection at store.americanperspective.online. Go to store.americanperspective.online. Now, this is a different manufacturer and distributor than what I was using with the Whiskey Musings broadcast stuff. That, by the way, if anybody still wants that gear, that logoed gear, there is a link to that. And also all of the Whiskey Musings stuff is still alive. In terms of, by alive, I mean in terms of internet land, you can still get to it. Ironically, that one is store.whiskeymusings.online, but this one here is the new logos and a grand selection of unisex, for the most part, unisex stuff. The only thing that isn't unisex is the women's racerback tank tops, which are, if this will actually load up for me. Let's see. I do have the women's racerback tank tops in the store as well. There we go. And I also have water bottles, a couple of coffee mugs. There you go. And there's the link for the Whiskey Musing, the old Whiskey Musing store. So yeah, go and check it out. store.americanperspective.online and show your pride, and my pride too, in the show, and tell other people about it. That is store.americanperspective.online. And I do appreciate that. Any kind of, assistance and help that you can do for that. And go there and check it out today. All right. Let's see here. Okay. So, this whole green thing that they've been talking about, these green stores, all of this green stuff. Hey, we're going to go green, green energy. Green is the way to go. Climate change is changing everything about all kinds of stuff that is in the world of human beings. Human beings affect the climate. I mean, it's not the fact that we have this, massive planet that does things on its own that we can't control. Things like hurricanes, tornadoes, unfortunately for the Midwest, and volcanoes, and all kinds of stuff that just cause and wreak environmental havoc all over our world, all over the globe. But hey, Americans, and especially Americans, but the world itself is in control. Humans are in control. Never mind the fact that the places like China and Russia and India, who don't necessarily subscribe to the same thing that we do in terms of the whole idea of climate change and green energy and all of this other stuff. Well, hey, it's all the humans' fault. It's not anything else. Well, what's worse is this push for green energy that that Joe Biden and the Democrats have been pushing for over and over and over again. I mean, never mind the fact that we don't have the infrastructure, the electrical infrastructure in place. We don't have the backup systems, the systems that are available to do things. I mean, just look at California and even Texas, for an example. California, by the way, constantly has brownouts and blackouts and troubles delivering electricity, and telling all those wonderful left-wing nut jobs that are down in California driving around their Teslas and their Nissan Leafs and any other freaking electric vehicle that's down there, telling them, no, you can't charge it at night because of the fact that we don't have the capacity to be able to. So, oh, and by the way, it's 100 degrees down here. Shut off your AC too, because that is going to put a strain on the power grid. And they still have blackouts and stuff like that. So what ends up happening with all of this stuff and this entire green energy push. Now, look, I'm going to be, as far as I am concerned, I am not looking down on green energy. Okay. What I am looking down on is the entire idea that we can just dump everything into that green energy basket. There are certain things that we can do, and I think that we can use green energy as a complement to other sources, and maybe potentially back a little bit off of those other sources. Because of the fact that, we want to cut things down. But to go through the whole idea and do a war on fossil fuels, which is the most reliable and pound for pound, the most packed energy source that we have outside of nuclear energy, which in and of itself is leaves a bad taste in a green person's mouth. But the thing about it is that there are other challenges other than just the grid and other than just the building of all of the things that it would take in order to convert this country into the I'm watching the Rumble chat. They're just like going off and having their own party. But all of this, all of this stuff really boils down to one thing and one thing only. And that literally is these things called batteries. Now, all of your cars, all of the backup systems that store the energy that come from sources of energy that are not consistently reliable, such as solar, wind energy, hydroelectric usually is, that one's pretty solid, but you can have drought years, like they find out at, Hoover Dam and stuff when the reservoir goes down. So, okay, I'm being told, hold on guys, I'm being told that I got to do an off the rails. So the Rumble chat is, that's right. The train has left the station over there. They've lost it over on the Rumble chat. In fact, I'm having a hard time even paying attention to the conversation over there. Okay. So back to the whole story thing. The thing about it is that all of these green energies, when the sun goes away, or when it's cloudy, or when it's snowy, or in the wind, when the wind stops blowing, any of that stuff, we have to have a storage source for where that, all that energy that we're bringing in can be, stored so that we can eventually use it when the source of that energy is no longer being functional. And this is part of the problem. Well, let me tell you a little story, because all of those EV cars, they all take what's called rare earth metals. This is a great article in the Epic Times piece, which, by the way, all of the articles that I present here, they are all in the show notes, or the description of the video, I should say, is where those show notes are. But U.S. remains hostage to China's rare earth metals monopoly. Now, here's the thing. The U.S. actually had the rare earth metals monopoly, but surrendered it in the middle of the 1990s. They surrendered it to China. So here's kind of the breakdown, and this is a commentary piece, but it really holds true with this whole idea of green energy and where we need to go with the green, the whole climate change green agenda. So the Biden administration, of course, is pushing the nation to transfer from gas-powered cars to electric vehicles. And that means that the United States needs about 10 times the amount of the rare earth metals than it currently has, or can produce, in order to meet that commitment. Now, keep that in mind. That is an estimation based on just electric vehicles. That means the electric trucks, the electric cars, all of these things that we have that are currently on the road using petroleum-based products and switching them over to electric. We would need 10 times the amount of what we already have, or what we can produce. Okay. Now, that being the case, and again, keep in mind, rare earth metals there's a reason why they're called that. They're not that hard, or not that easy to find, and they're not that easy to pull from the earth. We also have rare earth metals that are also necessary for things like strategic military, our communications, guidance assets, and the shortfall of the national supply is essentially untenable, much like our current spending spree that we're going on, but I digress. Today, China holds a near monopoly on the supply and the processing of rare earth metals over worldwide. The United States is all in and fully dependent upon China. That is, that the Chinese Communist Party has a lock on rare earth metals needed to maintain and build strategic weapons, also to take care of our EVs and everything else. And this is part of the reason why the Pentagon says the rare earth metal shortage in the United States is actually a matter of national security. So, this isn't just for our EVs and stuff like that. Well, here's a little bit of history. In 1980, the United States produced virtually all of the world's rare earth metals. Even up to the 1990s, according to some reports, the United States still had a global monopoly on rare earth metals mining and processing, all through what was called the Mountain Pass mining operation in California's Mojave Desert. The rare earth metals were simply a natural byproduct of other mining operations, by the way, for other substances that we were looking for, such as titanium, phosphate, and zircon. In fact, one singular mine alone was the main supplier of rare earth metals in the world at the time. And the Americans, we eventually gave it to the Chinese. Go figure. It was accomplished by a couple of purchasing things. For an example, Molycorp, which was the largest rare earth mining and processing companies in the United States, gradually transferred its industrial technology and assets to China due to a CEO with Chinese business interests. So they ended up getting a CEO and that was Chinese and had Chinese business interests and went ahead and transferred all of that stuff out. Then Molycorp declared bankruptcy, and at that point, a Chinese-related firm called Neo Materials bought it out from the bankruptcy. And then, of course, we also have the other factor, which is all of the environmental-driven laws which prevented mining and so on and so forth. They forced the ceasing of mining operations, and it prompted the United States to just go ahead and outsource everything to processing for mining and processing of rare earth metals to China. And that's because China doesn't have environmental restrictions. Gee, I wonder what's going on here. Maybe the oil industry also has that same problem, because I've seen a bunch of leftists on X talking about the oil industry and gas prices and the oil prices going down, but gas prices staying high. They don't seem to understand that there's a thing called refining that has to happen in between that also has to deal with the fact that we haven't had a new refinery built in the United States in decades. But hey, I digress. Same exact thing happening in oil as it is here with these valuable metals that we have. So the United States, after that, just went ahead and started handing over the mining technology, intellectual property, expertise to produce all of that. They handed it over to China. The United States basically voluntarily gave up everything. Okay? Why we did this, I don't know. Well, we also had a history of bad decisions, intentional mistakes, according to the piece here. In 1995, for an example, the U.S. Congress approved the sale of what was called MagnaQuench, which was a solely U.S.-based producer of magnets critical for the nation's most advanced guided missile systems. Another producer called GA Powders of rare earth magnetic powers was also sold. MagnaQuench was bought none other than the family of former CCP leader Deng Xiaoping. 7 years later, its U.S.-based manufacturing unit was shuttered and moved to China. So we've basically been going around and just selling off and handing off all of this stuff over to China over time. And then in 1998, defense authorities decided that the United States didn't need to have any strategic reserve of rare earths. God, what a brilliant brilliant move that was. Holy crap. Can't even believe that. Well, and even today, I mean, just to give you an idea, today China's dominance in the global supply of rare earth metals comprises more than approximately 80% of its share of raw materials. Now, I'm also telling you this, it's not just rare earth metals for like EV batteries. It is also things that make semiconductors and stuff like that China owns and holds. All right. I am going to take a really quick break here, but I have the reason why I have to have a break. And the reason why I'm taking a break is I'd like to introduce you to the person who made all of this right here possible. Okay. Please give a warm American perspective welcome to my mother. This is my mother. You can call her Mama Whiskey. Okay. Hello there.
Hello, everybody. How are you?
So she is up here visiting, okay, and she is, obviously this is like, I think this is the first time you've ever seen me do this live, right?
No.
No? Oh,
No.
You've seen it before?
Yes, I just haven't been.
Oh, yeah, well, okay. So I convinced her to allow everything and, to convince her to come on here and talk and say hello and say hi to everybody. Now, she also lurks in the chat, just to let you know, in the Rumble chat. We finally figured everything out to where she can actually interact on her phone because she's got like this thing with the phone attached to her hand. It's just like everybody else. But anyway, I digress. Hello, Mother. Thank you for coming in and saying hello to everybody. And,
I love you, baby.
Oh, I love you too. I love you too. Thank you very much.
Have a good night, everybody.
All right.
And I'll be in the chat. Once in a while, I'll make a comment. But yeah, I'll be there.
Yeah.
Good seeing everybody.
Yep. See, there you go. There you go. So everybody's there saying, saying you're beautiful. They're saying happy, thanks for coming and so on and so forth. But anyway, so there you go. She is the reason that I exist. Okay. Let's just put it that way.
And I'm very proud of him. I have to say that. I did a great job, guys.
Shit. All right. All right. Thank you for coming in and stopping by there, Mama. We'll see you. Yes. Okay. Good night. All right. Thank you all for making her, feel welcome. I do appreciate that. All right. So given the fact that, the whole EV thing and the precious earth metals and so on and so forth that is going on with the entire situation here, let me Judge, she drinks wine. Okay. She's drinking wine out there. She needs a drink. I know she's drinking wine. But anyway, yes. And there's Mrs. Oh, so anyway, is there Mrs. Whiskey popped in for just a second, gave a little look, and caused me to have a spot right back here in my green screen. Anyway, enough said. All right. So, Trump, you recall, okay, off track, but you recall that Trump talked about a bloodbath. And when he was talking about a bloodbath, he was talking about the auto industry. Well, check this out. Trump was right. The EV bloodbath is already here. Now, I don't know. I don't think I mentioned it. Maybe I did, but, I think I did. Ford lost like something like 40,000 plus on every single EV that it's sold in the last several years just recently. And so, yeah, it's just crazy. The demand for EVs is low because they keep talking about how EVs are so affordable and everything else. But I don't know about you, but I can't even afford a freaking Tesla. Not saying that I'd want one. And God forbid, I use a truck all the time for some of the things that I do here on the place. I can't afford a freaking Cybertruck, nor would I want one. The thing is ugly as hell. But you know, again, we're dealing with this EV push, and we've got all kinds of factors that are making it so that we literally cannot support this idea that everything is going to be an EV. I mean, the whole thing with buses, I don't know if anybody's seen this, but electric buses going up on fire. You know, you have electric cars. I talked about this on the program. When electric cars get on fire, they just release all kinds of toxic gases and everything else. And our fire department, all they can do is just allow the thing to burn itself out. Just try to contain the fire to allow it to, you know, burn it out. And so this whole EV push and this whole thing with this green cars and green energy is just not going to help. We can't make the batteries for them. We're dependent upon China for that. I've just talked about it. We have problems with our infrastructure. We have problems with keeping the green energy alive in terms of the ideas for this. I don't know if anybody caught this. Maybe, you know, I know Buddy Weiser's over on the coast. He might have heard about some of this on the East Coast, I should say. He might have heard a little bit about this, but oh, wait, before I get into that, Biden administration just released some new climate rules that also add $31,000 to the price of a new home, according to industry groups say. It's already bad enough that we can't afford, that young people can't afford homes due to the interest rates today. Now what we end up with is we have an additional $31,000 just because of the new climate rules to try and make these homes more energy efficient and green. It's just causing the price of these homes to go up. And it's going to raise housing costs, is what these groups are saying. Biden administration's latest energy efficient rule for new home construction will push up costs and make housing even less affordable at a time when house prices have just notched fresh record highs, according to two home builders associations. Last week, the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, known as HUD, and the U.S. Department of Agriculture, the USDA, announced the adoption of updated minimum energy standards for new single-family and multifamily housing construction built with federal financing and funding. So, yeah, they are looking to reduce our carbon emissions, which, you know, I seem to recall carbon-based, let's see, what is it? Carbon dioxide? What is that called? Carbon dioxide. Yes. CO2 gases, which is the primary gas that the Biden administration is focused on, which has to go to plants. Plants convert that into oxygen for us to be able to breathe in. This is ridiculous. They're adding $31,000 to the price of a new home just to deal with climate rules that have to deal with cutting out a gas that is really helping the planet. I don't know if anybody remembered, but I think I showed the article where it talks about how the planet has never been this green. Due to all the CO2 that we're putting out. Anyway, and of course, never mind the fact that anything that we do doesn't negate things that Russia, China, and India, all three, are consistently doing on a regular basis, because they don't jump into this whole climate agenda thing, especially China. But anyway, I digress. All right, back to the whole point, you know, with Buddy Weiser living on the East Coast. Biden has put out and is pursuing these offshore wind farms. Now, I've seen them flying into Amsterdam, by the way. I've seen these wind farms flying into Amsterdam in the ocean, and it's kind of cool to see, but at the same time, you know, Biden is trying to turn us into that. The Department of the Interior, this comes from a Just the News article. The Department of the Interior announced last week a schedule of 12 offshore wind lease areas to be offered over the next 5 years. This includes spots in the Gulf Coast, the West Coast, and the East Coast. Well, that pretty much covers the 3 coasts that we have. I mean, I would love to see them. Anyway, so among them is a Dominion Energy Coastal Virginia offshore wind farm, which is a 176 turbine project that's planned to produce roughly 2.6 gigawatts of power, and the wind is blowing. With enough wind blowing for 1 hour, the article states, the project could power more than 2 million homes for that one singular hour. And that's the key. Providing any households with on-demand power from intermittent wind and solar requires backup power from the battery facilities that we just talked about, the rare earth metals being tied in with China. Oh, my gosh, people. Okay. Now, they generally, these kinds of facilities will have backup facilities, either battery facilities, gas or coal-powered fired plants, hydroelectric facilities, or nuclear power plants. Now, I'm going to take a step away from this article for a second. I've told you a couple of different times that I personally have spoken with a local widespread energy producer here in my neck of the woods. And we essentially, I was doing unrelated work at the time, and I was asking the people there, because I happen to have one of the high-end or higher-up people, I was asking them, I said, hey, you guys run wind farms and hydroelectric farms and all this other stuff. How, and solar farms too, come to think about it, they do all three. How beneficial are those things to the energy that you're producing and providing to all of these people? And they literally told me this. They get more energy pound for pound out of their coal-fired and, natural gas plants than they do from any and all of the green energy sources that they have available, including several dams, because I asked them in one in particular about the dam that we were standing on at the time. And he basically told me that no, even though this dam can produce a lot of power, it is used as a backup to the fossil fueled plants. So they don't even run the dam very often because of the fact that the dam can't produce enough power for the demand. The same thing goes with the wind farms. In fact, I went over to the wind farms that were over in Eastern Washington, and I was doing some work over there, and I asked the question, I'm like, hey, what's going on with these wind farms? I see like half of the turbines are moving. Even though you can feel the wind, I'm like, half of the turbines are moving. And they were like, well, they said, with the turbines and everything that's running, we can't run all of them at the same time because in variation, some of them are in maintenance required status. They use up, as I've told you before, they've used up all kinds of oil, something like 80,000 gallons in the lifetime of a turbine. The fact that the turbines themselves and the blades have a average lifespan of 25 years, I believe it was, and the return on investment doesn't actually come in until 30 years on these things. That's a 5-year gap, folks. We got all kinds of problems with these green energy sources. They're just not as efficient as what everybody is saying that they are. Well, here's part of the problem with this. These people who are watching this project go in off the shores of Virginia Beach, Virginia, going back to the article, they're getting a little irritated over the sounds and the cites of these things. Because at one point when they had a committee meeting or a public hearing or whatever kind of meeting that they have, that these guys, they told them that they wouldn't be able to see the turbines, thereby ruining their view of the ocean and the water. When in actuality, the pilot project turbines that they were using in order to gauge how much they needed in doing pre-planning and testing were about 200 feet shorter than the ones that they're putting in. And so now what's happening is the ones that they're building, which are 200 feet taller than the original pilot project ones, are now starting to be seen. They can be seen from multiple locations. And there's a lot of people who are in the reside in that area who are all saying they were duped with regards to it. Now, here's the other piece of this, is that Biden's goal is to get 30 gigawatts of offshore wind power by 2030. This place is anticipating that it's going to get 2.6 gigawatts of power. Now, somebody might think that's a lot, but the fact of the matter is that that is dependent upon the weather. That's dependent upon whether or not the wind can actually kick it in. And in fact, the hotels, speaking of the vision part, the hotels in the area were expressing concern because of the fact that at night, because these things are tall enough to be in the path of aircraft, if an aircraft is sensed to be close enough within something like 1,000 yards or something like that of it, or 1,000 feet, the anti-collision lights will pop on and they will start to flash and make everybody aware of the fact that they are there. And the hotels were like, hey, and that stuff is visible, by the way, from our vantage point. I'm sure they're bright. They're not like the little red lights that you would normally see. There might be some of those. But yeah, they flash. They're like, and now they're supposed to shut off after the plane goes away, but still, and it's only an intermittent thing, but still, yeah, it's a bit of a problem. Plus, you have all of the construction on shore that's going on to bring in the transmission lines from this offshore wind farm that's causing some problems. Now, one of the things that was promised to these people, by the way, was that there was supposed to be a facility in Portsmouth, Virginia, that was going to bring 300 jobs, and it was going to be a wind turbine blade finishing manufacturing place. Well, guess what? It's no longer happening. The Port of Virginia confirms the estimated $280 million plus project that was first announced in 2021 was nixed by the Germany-based company Siemens Gamesa Renewable Energy. And in a statement, that spokesperson said that the decision was made after the development milestones to establish the facility could not be met. Yeah. Dominion Energy is the state's largest energy provider that is planning the largest offshore wind farm to date in the U.S., and it says that news doesn't really inhibit their project, even though they're actually using them. That's the company that they're getting the blades from for these wind turbines and everything else. So something that was purported to be a benefit to the area, not only in terms of the power, but also in terms of jobs. Now the jobs have been taken away and the power is still there, for the moment anyway. Well, here's the thing. Everybody talks about how wind farms and solar farms and everything else are supposed to be cheaper. Well, just the news. Utilities, wind and solar are said to be cheaper, but utilities keep asking for higher rates from consumers. Green energy proponents in the media have claimed that wind and solar generation, or solar and wind generation, I should say, are now cheaper than gas, oil, or coal, and renewables now account for 15% of power generation, a threefold increase over 7 years. Yet utilities have this month filled rate increase requests across the country. This month have filed rate increase requests across the country. And here's the reason why. Because of the fact that studies have shown that, wind and solar can be cheaper than the comparative fossil fuels, there's a lot that's left out of that calculation that they don't tell you about. For an example, the aforementioned batteries that China holds all of the raw materials for, those batteries aren't counted in the calculation for bringing that energy and storing it so that it can be used during off-peak hours and during off-peak generation times. Those batteries are typically not calculated as a part of it. The other thing that comes into play with this whole thing is, again, dealing with the cost of the upkeep on these things, the transmission lines that are being brought in on these things. So Google, as an example, was planning to run its entire operations on 100% renewable energy by 2030. Now, using simple math, let's see, who is this guy? What is this guy's name? Ordner. I got to find his name here. I lost his name. Hold on. Stand by. I'm getting it. Okay, Lee Cordner, who is a power grid consultant with 50 years experience, told Just the News that the LOCE, which is the levelized cost of energy, doesn't calculate what it costs to support what he calls the intermittent nature of renewables. And he says he's fond of saying that wind is cheaper 30% of the time. The other 70% gets really expensive. And that essentially is what we're talking about here. So Google planned to run its entire operations on renewable energy by 2030. Using simple math, Cordner illustrated a cost comparison for a single 100 megawatt data center running on natural gas-fired power, and then, of course, that same facility running entirely on solar batteries. Now, this hypothetical center has an average energy consumption size of 100 megawatts. It runs 24 hours per day, 365 days per year, which means that it's just under 900,000 megawatt hours per year. A 100 megawatt gas turbine, Cordner explained, costs about $125 million and uses about $10 million in fuel per year. Plant runs 96% of the time, and the average solar farm costs $1 million per megawatt. And a battery facility, in order to keep that power on the side, costs an additional $300,000 to $600,000 per megawatt hour of storage. Now, on the sunny summer days, a solar farm will produce power for about 6 to 7 hours, or about 600 megawatt hours. But the problem is that 600 megawatt hours has to go somewhere to get stored. So to keep the data center running during the day, that's fine. But its dusk and night would require 1,800 megawatt hours of battery storage because of the fact that there are cooling systems that have to get added into this. And I know this is getting a little sciencey here, folks, but you got to bear with me. Basically, what's going on here, just so you fully understand what's happening, is that these facilities, these green facilities, when somebody comes to you and tells you that green energy is cheaper and green energy is less expensive, they are not putting in all of the costs of what is occurring here. They're not putting in all of the additional infrastructure and all of the additional systems that have to go into keeping the batteries cool. And they don't account for the fact that those batteries, by the way, and the inversion of that power to go from a battery to like AC power, is also additionally added into the cost of this whole thing. And you've got all kinds of issues. I agree with the idea. And if you can go and have a system that runs, during the day for solar system or something like that, and it can lower or augment a fossil fuel powered system, then yeah, go for it. If that becomes the desired way to go, and you can save a little money off of doing something like that, that's great. But to sit here and to say we're going to be 100% covered on renewable energies off of all this, yeah, it's not going to happen, folks. It's not going to happen. Batteries don't last forever. The silicon in the solar panels, they are only so efficient. They're not 100% efficient. They're only about 70%, maybe 80% at best efficient in terms of converting sunlight into battery energy. And then, of course, you have all of the conversion going into the batteries. And, of course, the byproduct of any kind of energy conversion is heat. Anyone with basic science in their background can remember that. So this entire thing is just a long-term boondoggle until we can get things back into play, until we can get stuff back under control in terms of our ability to be able to supply all of these things at a proper return on investment cost. This is going to do nothing but drive up costs across the board. And you thought inflation was bad. Wait until all of this comes into play. All right. Let me see here. Okay, so I have one more article here that I want to talk about. It's going to be a bit of a shift. We're going away from still in the science mode, but we're gonna go away from the whole idea of green energy and stuff like that. Do you remember how last night I was telling you that AstraZeneca was being sued and that they got they had a document come out that essentially reminded everybody that, yes, even though it was a rare occurrence, there was a possibility of myocarditis and problems with the heart with their vaccine. Well, this came out in the Epoch Times. And as I've told you multiple times, the Epoch Times has been tracking this whole COVID thing quite well. If you get an opportunity, even just to look at the free version of the Epoch Times. It is fantastic. Okay. Fantastic. But CDC found evidence COVID-19 vaccines caused deaths. Internal documents contradict claims from the CDC, which refused to explain the discrepancy. So this is the Epoch Times. Apparently, CDC officials found evidence that the Pfizer BioNTech and Moderna COVID vaccines caused multiple deaths before claiming that there was no evidence linking the vaccines to any deaths, the Epoch Times has learned. CDC employees worked to track down information on reported post-vaccination deaths and learned that myocarditis, or heart inflammation, a confirmed side effect of the vaccines, was listed on death certificates and in the autopsies for some of the deaths, according to an internal file obtained by the Epoch Times. Myocarditis was described as being caused by vaccination in a subset of those deaths. In other words, In other cases, the CDC workers found that deaths met the agency's definition for myocarditis and that patients started showing symptoms within 42 days of a vaccine dose, and that the deceased displayed no virus-related symptoms. Officials say that after 42 days, a possible link between the vaccine and symptoms had become tenuous, and they list post-vaccination deaths as unrelated if they can find any possible alternative causes. In cases with those three features, it is absolutely safe to say the vaccines caused the deaths, according to Dr. Claire Craig, a British pathologist and co-chair of the Health Advisory and Recovery Team Group. She told the Epoch Times as a part of an email. Despite the findings, most of which were made by the end of 2021. They knew about this back in 2021. The CDC claimed that it had seen no signs linking the Moderna and Pfizer messenger RNA vaccines to any of the deaths reported to the Vaccine Adverse Event Reporting System, also known as VAERS. CDC sent a letter to the Epoch Times dated June 13th of 2023, said that there were no deaths reported to the VAERS for which the agency determined the available evidence indicated Moderna or Pfizer vaccination caused or contributed to the deaths. Well, that is in direct contradiction to what they found with the internal documents. Dr. Andrew Bostom, a heart expert based in the United States, told the Epoch Times, that's a scandal where you have information like this and you continue to put out this dishonest line that there are only 7 deaths and they're all unrelated to the mRNA vaccines. The CDC is concealing these deaths. And a CDC spokeswoman declined to explain why the CDC doesn't consider autopsies or death certificates as evidence of causality. Like I said, folks, the last time, drip, 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 drip. Pretty soon that drip becomes an actual pouring of water. And next thing you know, the damn faucet is completely off its hinges and just allowing water to go all over the place. This is coming. This is coming. As we start to learn more and more about these things, this is coming. The truth is going to be coming out for sure. All right. Instead of a pet of the week for tonight, sorry, the wife interrupted me for something here. Instead of a pet of the week for tonight, I am going to do my newest. Yeah, she got her days wrong, folks. Anyway, sorry. See, now I got to do my own. There we go. Got to do my own off track. All right. So here we go. In a shift here. So since I don't have a pet of the week, but I do have a feel good story. And that is a feel-good story for my new segment, which some of you may not have seen. I've only displayed it once, but here, this is the new segment for tonight called Highlighting America. All right. And I'm highlighting America. I'm actually highlighting a group of young people. I don't know if anybody saw this story, but you know the whole thing with all the protests and everything else that we've had going on? Well, there's a group of young men, a fraternity, in fact, a fraternity of young men who were at UNC Chapel Hill. And this video that I'm about to show you comes from Libs of TikTok, but you know how the protesters have been like ripping down the American flags. In fact, Ari, God, I can't think of his name, but anyway, he's the video guy. He went to one of the California schools and was walking around in a shirt that had the flag displayed on his shirt, and he was spit on and pushed and shoved down and like beaten and hit and all kinds of stuff. Ben Shapiro showed that image, but these young men, young students, and I'm just saying young men, but I think it's more than just young men. We'll take a look at the video here in just a second. The protesters were ripping down the American flag at UNC Chapel Hill. That's University of North Carolina, for those of you that don't know. And these young men went over, and the students, I'm going to say the students, but they came over and they went ahead and protected Old Glory. Check out this video. It's a short video. It's about 1 minute long. So check out this video and what happened here. Okay, so for those of you who are on the audio portion of the program, I'm just going to tell you, there is a group of young men and young students who are holding up what appears to be an incredibly large American flag. This flagpole is probably close to, I'm going to guess, probably close to like 50 feet. So the flag that's flying on this thing is probably close to about a 10-foot tall flag with 20 foot in the length of the flag. Well, the protesters surrounded these young men who were holding up the flag because they did not want it to touch the ground. Okay? And so they are holding up the flag, and these people, these anti-American, sycophantic losers are surrounding these people. And there's actually other video. This is just the start, but there's other video that shows that these young people, I'm going to say, because I'm not entirely sure whether or not there was a woman with them or not, or a girl with them or not, but these young people who were protecting this flag were hit, were smacked with bottles and rocks and other things thrown at them, and they stood there and held up this flag to keep these anti-American, I mean, we can even go so far as to go terrorists, because Outlaw Dogs is saying terrorists, yelling terrorists over here on Rumble. Terrorists. These anti-American terrorists, and they are holding up Old Glory as best they can, and it's against the pro-Hamas anti-American protesters, terrorists who reportedly attempted to remove it. Now, these, you know, again, this is Libs of TikTok that posted this on X, and you could probably find it, but there's other videos later on where they're getting literally physically assaulted by the protest idiots that are surrounding them and smacking these kids. For those of you that don't know, you do not let our colors, you do not let our Old Glory touch the ground. That is sacrilege. And in fact, when it happens, there's even parts where you need to make sure that it is never desecrated by this happening. Now, here's another feel-good story for you. out of this, and this is in the Daily Wire. Apparently, everybody saw this, and now there is a GoFundMe that has been set up to fund a rager for these boys, for these frat boys who defended the American flag on the campus. So a GoFundMe has been set up in order to give these young gentlemen a party for doing the right thing and defending the American flag on the University of North Carolina's Chapel Hill campus, refusing to back down even as the pro-Palestinian protesters surrounded them and shouted profanities, threw water on them, etc. The incident was documented by UNC student Guillermo Estrada with the help of some photos taken by Parker Ali, who said that he had jumped into the fray not for political reasons, but simply because he did not want to see the American flag disrespected by his fellow students. Estrada said, "Today was a sad yet empowering day at Chapel Hill. When I walked to class, I saw the Palestinian flag raised on our quad flagpole and was immediately upset at the act that these protesters had made. I cannot say I am fully educated on the Israel-Palestine conflict, but it upset me that my country's flag was disrespected in order to advocate for another. Shortly after, Chancellor Roberts came with police officers to hang the colors, our flag, once again. They were met with profanity, middle fingers, thrown bottles, rocks, and water." And this was posted on X. He says, when the flag was raised once again, the Greek community began singing the national anthem. By the Greek community, he means the frats and sororities. As the chancellor left, the quad erupted into chaos as protesters began removing the flag once again, preparing to destroy it. My fraternity brothers and others ran over to hold it up in order for it to not touch the ground. People began throwing water bottles at us, rocks, sticks, calling us profane names. We stood for an hour defending the flag, so many fought to protect, and still fight to protect, by the way. Estrada went on to explain that he had grown up around military service members and was the son of parents who had come to the United States for the opportunities available to those willing to work for them. I grew up in a military community, he said, saw firsthand the sacrifices that they make. I will not stand for the disrespect these protesters cause for the sake of our country, for the sake of another country. My LDOC last day of classes will be memorable in knowing that my fraternity brothers and others fought to keep the flag up. But it will also be memorable in knowing that so many yearn to disrespect it. Ex-user John Noonan responded to the news of the fraternity's actions by wondering how to reward them with a keg. Short time later, upon learning that the gentlemen were part of the Pi Kappa Phi community, Noonan shared a link to a GoFundMe page titled Pi Kappa Phi Men Defend Their Flag. Throw 'em a rager. Just 1 hour after the page was created, more than $3,000 had already been raised. And there's a link in the Daily Wire, and I do have the link to the article, the Daily Wire article, where you can find the link to the GoFundMe page, I believe, or maybe not. Maybe it goes to X. But anyway, you can find the links and you can bounce around and find it. But anyway, so congratulations to these young men. And it's stuff like this, honestly, that gives me great pride and hope for the future. This is part of the reason why I, as with Dan Bongino, am long on the United States of America. It's for actions like these young men to go ahead and do that. Congratulations, gentlemen. You deserve whatever it is that you get for any kind of a reward. All right, that is the end of the program. Do me a favor, if you appreciate what I do, please head on over to Rumble, sign up for an account. It is free. Then find the American Perspective channel on Rumble and follow me there. Also make sure that you like this video by hitting that thumbs up button. That's how Rumble pays attention to that, and hopefully someday I'll end up on like the editor's picks page or something along those lines. But only, of course, with your support. All right, we will see you tomorrow night right back here. And yes, that is tomorrow night because, again, we're in that month-long test of 6 days a week, basically. But we will see you tomorrow night right here on American Perspective. Have a great rest of your evening. And make sure you take care. Keep your head on a swivel, folks. We'll see you all tomorrow. Good night, everybody.
The previous broadcast was produced and is owned by Active Eye Media LLC. All rights reserved.